Back in 2018, there was an offhand comment our director made about interest in using this exhibit, From Stone to Silicone, as part of storytelling. What modern storytelling techniques could we use to interest new audiences in this material? And so I thought augmented reality. It's not a video game, but it is a digital format for storytelling. What we're going to do is allow the visitors to come into the gallery, and when they aim their phone at one of our reliefs, it will immediately trigger an animation. I thought this would be a perfect way to get our museum visitors to experience the ancient world almost as if they are a participant. They are a character in that experience. This is where the narrator came in.
I see that you have brought gifts to the king again this year. Your leader understands that it is far better to submit willingly to the just rule of the gods than to stand against.
We wanted them to be able to interact with an ancient Assyrian, the palace overseer, and that palace overseer would lead them before the king and say, I'm sorry, the king is busy now, but in the meantime, enjoy the artwork in the palace. If you wish to know more, approach me. And so it's not a lecture, it's a story. So as we're trying to figure out what does this character look like, we began investigating ancient dress and costume. And you do some search on the web, and one of the top hits you get is Donald Barco from Australia. We loved his look. It was perfect. And he graciously allowed us to use his image as the inspiration for one of these characters. And the scripts developed from there. I knew something about the history of ancient Assyria. I researched the scenes, what was happening in those scenes, and I wrote a preliminary script that was then later edited by our scholarly advisor, Goika Baryamovich.
One of the amazing things about Mesopotamian history is that they wrote on clay. And so it survives unperturbed by the millennia until they are dug out again. There were very substantial palatial archives with tens of thousands of texts in them, many of them letters, and some of them describe in some detail how these audiences happened and what they looked like. So as you approach these objects with your phone, they come alive. And there were palace overseers. Every palace would have one chief overseer and a series of others below him who oversaw these very large economic as well as political institutions.
Many have learned that it is unwise to oppose our Lord. He has commemorated his victories on the carved panels you see in the palace reception halls.
We went back and forth on who the character was going to be and how the character would sound and what would the accent be. And we lighted on a professor in the Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations program here at Harvard. His name's Shadi Nasser, and he's perfect for it.
They told me they are doing this fantastic project and they want to use my voice because I have an accent, right?
It is best to submit and enjoy safety within the borders of the king's land.
The character should be, in a sense, intimidating, right? So it's an intimidating character. You have visitors who are coming to the palace, and these visitors, they need to be reminded always that they are under the authority of the king.
One of the original concepts of this app was that the ancient reliefs would come to life. And bringing them to life meant bringing color into the scene as well. And all of that is based upon the scholarship, what colors and pigments were available.
So it has long been known that these things were brightly painted. Like with classical Greek art, once they reached the European and American museums, these objects were very often cleaned and scrubbed. However, you cannot scrub away everything, and within the stone itself, because it's a soft and porous material, bits and pieces of the pigments that were used on these objects were preserved. Shianthi Thavapalan, who's now a professor in Amsterdam, and she did these chemical analyses, and on that basis she could reconstruct the color palette that these people used and with which these were decorated.
It's all based on scholarship. The music and the sound effects are based upon scholarly work. What kinds of instruments were in this world? Richard Dumbrill is an archaeomusicologist who produced the music and sound effects for us. He's a scholar that recreates ancient music based upon the instruments that were available at the time.
What we see here in the gallery and what the app also tells us is a very specific story. It's the story of the great Assyrian Empire and the great Assyrian king. So I would absolutely bring my students here, and I would probably have them go through the gallery multiple times. First, just like as it is, without any technology, and have a look at the images, and then they have to kind of think about what it does to them, what their experience is. Then with the app, and following the story that the app tells us. The app really adds the life back into it and brings us back on this level of connection between humans, between us in the modern day and then the ancient people who lived these lives that we see represented.
Narrate.
Even if we're not standing up in front of our visitors and saying, there's good hard scholarship behind this, they're passively getting all of this information. They don't know it. They're learning, secretly learning, I guess. So.
I'm always looking at what's coming down the pike. Can I use this as an application, as a tool for the things I'm trying to study and perhaps teach about? The technology gets more supple all the time, more flexible, comes down in cost, and is easier to produce. That doesn't mean that you can dispense with the team, so you always need the content creators, you need the specialists. And when you can put all those people together and get it all to work and come together in an app that's easy to use, exciting, informative, and fun, then you've won.